Welcome to Cultimatum, the podcast uncovering the dark realities of cults and human trafficking. I'm your host, Anonymous Andrew, and each week we dive deep into the manipulation, control, and courageous escapes that define these worlds.
And I'm Melody, Andrew's co-host. Having experienced the depth of a cult firsthand, specifically the House of Yahweh, I am here as an advocate for fellow survivors.
The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not reflect the official policy or position of Cultimatum or its affiliates. The content discussed on this podcast are based on personal experiences and should not be construed as factual or legal advice. Neither the host nor the guest are liable for any statements made during the episodes. Listeners are encouraged to conduct their own research and seek professional advice where appropriate.
And before we dive into today's episode, we want to issue a trigger warning. Some episodes may cover explicit and potentially disturbing subjects such as sexual abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other sensitive subjects. Listener discretion is advised. Hey, Cultimatum fans, before we dive into today's episode, we have a quick favor to ask.
If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, could you take a moment to rate and review the show?
It really does help more people find Cultimatum and helps bring awareness to cults and human trafficking.
Thanks so much. And now let's jump into today's episode. Okay, welcome back to Cultimatum Part 2 with Nicole Mafi from The Order. And what a story. So, such a fascinating story that we decided to make it 2 episodes, 2 parts. So, Nicole, the last we left you, you were going off to college. And you also were being asked to marry your cousin, or your cousin asked you to marry him, but totally against your wishes. And you came into your mom to talk to her about it, and she was so happy for you when you were crying. You want to take us from there, and then we'll go from that to, I guess we'll work towards when did you marry him? Did you have kids? Did you take it from there?
Okay. So thank you so much for having me back.
Thank you for coming back.
Yeah. So back to where I ended. I went and I told my mom, I went on the date with him. And then it seemed like after I got back from that date, my whole life changed. And and I didn't understand this. I had watched other women in the cult go through the same thing, and I didn't understand what was going on until I actually went through it myself. And it was really just, that's when they started the whole deep brainwashing of trying to get me to marry this guy, right? If they could get me to say I do, I was literally trapped. I was 16. I would be legally obligated to this man. I didn't know enough about the system to even think about a divorce or what that looks like. I didn't know anything about how any of that worked, right? And so my dad came to me right afterwards and pulled me out of college, told me I was no longer going to be in college until I got married, and then that would be my husband's choice. I was not allowed to really hang out with my friends. I was only allowed to hang out with the select people that they chose within the community. And my whole life was under a microscope. And it became more and more controlled. And so I remember feeling this tightening and it was like triggering, it triggered panic mode in me. And I thought, I knew I had my time to leave. This was when I made the decision to leave. I was about 16, almost 17, and I made the decision that I was going to leave. I didn't tell anybody because I knew that, in fact, I had actually been one. I had seen girls who had tried to leave, and even their friends were used to keep them there, right? Like I had one friend that was trying to leave, and they used me to tattle on her because she was trying to get an outside bank account. So I was fairly intelligent and realized I could not trust anybody in the community to try to help me leave. And so I remember one day I pulled open the phone book and I thought, I'm going to find a martial arts class. I'm going to learn how to defend myself and take care of myself. And I found a class and I snuck out and I walked to this class. And the instructor there looked at me and was like, do you have a parent? And I was like, well, yeah, they're going to come later. And like, I kind of like, I was scrambling. Like I was desperate to find any contact with the outside world. And I think really he just felt bad for me. And he was like, okay, well, here's the plan. Like I can give you a little bit of a discount or whatever. Like he was really good with working with me. And so I went and I told my mom, I said, I need some clothes because like I want to look good at the dances. I want to do all of this like so that I can get ready to get married. And so she gave me the money and I went and I paid for karate. And I was working a full-time job. I had been pulled out of college and I was going back. I was sneaking out and I was going to these karate classes. And that was, it was really a lifeline for me. And I remember finally one day, my mom found out what I was doing and she went down to the instructor and she said, and she told him, you need to pull her out. And he was like, you're her parent. You like, and because she did not even understand her rights in that situation to prevent me from going to college or from going to karate, right? Because my mom was so brainwashed as well, and she didn't know how to work that system either.
Right.
And so he was like, yeah. So he was just like, well, she's paid it and I can't, like, I'm not just going to kick her out or whatever. And then I started going there more and more and more just to get away from the order. And my dad forced my mom to move away from that location. So away from so I was in Bountiful, Utah at the time. And the karate class was 5-10 minute walk from my house. Or closer to 30 minutes. It was about a 30-minute walk. And so my dad took my mom and moved her into Sandy, Utah, which was about 45 minutes away, thinking that that was going to pull me away from these people. And I remember going into my instructor because I had started telling him a little bit about my situation. And he was like, and he was up against a wall as well, because if he tried to help me, I was a minor and he would be charged with harboring a runaway. And so he was very limited in what he could do as well.
But he was sympathetic towards you and wanted to help you. Just felt, I guess, his hands were tied in a way.
Exactly. In fact, and that's what was really sad because people in Utah know about these communities and they know what's going on, but there's not anything they can really do.
Right.
And so when he actually encountered somebody and like he could tell because so about 2 months prior to this, he had offered me, he said, you would be a really good martial arts instructor. And I would like you to come and do an instructor training to see if you're interested. And I told him, I said, there's no way that I'm going to be able to do this. And he said, well, you're going to be 18 in about a year. And I said, I'll be married with 2 kids by then. And he was like, or I said, I'll be married with a kid by then. And he was like, you know, that's your choice. And I was like, is it? Like, I was like, it's
like,
not. Though.
Not in my world.
Like, what does that even mean? Choice?
Wait a second. And this is going to sound a typical Andrew making a left turn here. So why in this cult or in the order or any cult that breeds women so they can get married at 16 and have more, why send you to college? What's the purpose of you going to college if your whole purpose in life in the order is to just produce kids and make more cult members?
The women in the cult run the offices.
Oh, so they need you. They want accountants. They want
So
secretary, whatever. Okay.
Yeah. So the way that their business works is they have 4 different offices. They have the fidelity office, the payroll office, and the women are now they have to keep women that are very, very loyal and very, very close to the leadership. Right. And so they keep those women, and they are the ones that run the offices part-time.
Now I'm going to try to think as a cult leader now. If I send you to college, I'm taking a chance that you're going to see the worldly people and you're going to like it out there. I'll train you how to be my accountant because I'm taking a risk by sending you to. That's just my backwards thinking. Okay,
it's not backward thinking. So I actually had this conversation with my dad, and he was like, you guys were our test subjects. And he was like, I'm very, very selective of who I send now, because he was thinking in his mind, he was like, I'm going to send all these kids to college. I'm going to get $3,000-$4,000 a semester per kid from the Pell Grants.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also going to have these women that are going to run my accounting offices.
Gotcha.
And he's thinking that these women are just going to stay so loyal and stupid because anyways.
And let's just clarify that is the labor trafficking of the cult.
Correct. Right.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure you're not getting a paycheck for that. And if you are, it's bare minimum or very little.
Less than minimum wage. Yep.
All right, back to your martial arts. This is interesting.
So I was going to martial arts. So my dad actually came to I think they kind of tried a different technique with me. They were trying to pull me out, and like the more that they fought me on it, the harder I fought to get away. So I think in their mind they were like, okay, we're gonna meet her where she's at. We're gonna get her to say yes, and then she can't keep going, right? And so my dad came to one of my martial art tournaments. I did a tournament. It happened to be at the school that he graduated high school from. So we went down the hallways of this high school, and he was like, yeah, this is where I graduated and all of this stuff. And then he turned to me and he said, Nicole, I understand that you may think there might be more out there, but as somebody and I can't remember his exact words, but it was pretty much that as somebody that wanted something more, I'm glad that I made the choice to stay in the order and take over the order and do all of this. I think that was his way of trying to connect with me and really just get me to do what he wanted me to do.
But let's be clear. He was a male and he was a leader. You were a female and you were a child and you had no say in anything. He had all the say in the world.
That's a poor strategy on his part.
Yes. So yes, you're correct. So I don't think that he had a lot of choice when he was a child. And I think that now he has a choice and he's seeing it as this is a good thing, but he doesn't, but you're absolutely right. He doesn't understand that me as a woman, I will never, I couldn't even own a home if I stayed in the order. I would never, ever amount to anything more than a wife with tons of kids. Right.
Right.
And so in his mind, I think that this was his technique, his bonding technique. And honestly, we had a pretty good relationship up until the marriage part came, because we had a lot in common. We were both academically inclined. We both liked to run. We had a lot in common, and we had some pretty good philosophical conversations. We actually did have a bond. And I think he was hoping to play on that and manipulate that into getting me to do what he wanted me to do. So when he said that to me, honestly, in that moment, when he pretty much told me I should just stay, I felt really sad for him, because I was like, this was not what you wanted either. Why are you trying to sell this bullshit to me when this was not what you ever wanted? And in my mind, I think in the opposite of what he wanted to have happened, because I was like, I'm leaving. I'm done. This is not I see, in fact, and I've read my journal long afterwards, and I remember writing, it's there, I see the road if I stay in this community, and it is not what I want. I don't know what the other road is, but I know that it cannot be worse than the one I'm living in. And because everybody would say, well, you're going to go to hell if you leave. And my response to them was, I'm already in hell. It doesn't get worse than this.
We hear that a lot. When they tell you you're going to go to the lake of fire or whatever, a lot of people say, I'm already there.
Exactly.
Just jump to did you marry him?
So I waited. This guy didn't want to wait for me anymore. So you have to keep in
You
mind,
stalled.
yes, I was able to stall for a couple of months, and then this guy kind of moved on. So they had me go on a
Good
date
for
with
you.
my first cousin.
Oh,
and then at that point, so as we go on, they had me go on a date with my first cousin. So I stalled long enough. I didn't say yes to this guy, and they had me go on a date with my first cousin, who was the son of John Daniel. And that family has literally beaten kids and wives so badly that they need to be hospitalized. In fact, I was best friends with some of his daughters, and like one day, one of my friends came to school and she was crying, and I was like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "Well, my dad pushed my mom down the stairs last night and she lost her baby." And I was like, that was common practice. And so I was terrified to marry this man. And at that point, and the crazy thing is all of my aunts were like, "You should just marry him. He would be so nice to you." And I remember they took me on these dates, and one of his brothers came to me, and he fed me this whole line, like, "You can go to college, you can do all of this stuff if you marry me." And I was getting close to saying yes. And one of his brothers came to me and said, "Nicole, like, we've been friends forever." So this friend has actually left and come out as gay and is very, like, living his best life. So, like, I will always, like, I actually just did an interview with him recently. He's absolutely amazing. His name is Val. He came to me and he was like, "Nicole, this is not true. Because while he's telling you this, he's telling his brothers that he's going to get you saddled with kids and you're not going anywhere." And at that moment, I was like, yeah, no. So then at that point, so one night I had a friend who, like, I had friends from karate. I didn't really explain a lot of what was going on, but one night I realized, like, I'm getting to the end, right? They're going to force me to do something if I don't leave. My time for leaving is coming to an end. So one night I packed up a bunch of things and I got into my car and I drove away, and I never went back. And my mom,
how old were you at this point?
17.
17. Okay.
Yes. So yeah,
So
I drove.
so to be clear, you left before you were forced to marry anyone, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yes. So
Good for you. I just have to say, good for you. Good for you.
yeah. It was coming. So I knew it was coming down to the wire, and I didn't know. I knew a lot of girls who wanted to leave and wanted to leave and wanted to leave and kept trying to leave. And then once they said I do, in fact, I've been to weddings where the girl is just sobbing because she knows that she's not getting out after that point. They legally have you. They legally own you at that point. And so, yeah. So one night I disappeared.
What?
And
What just for time frame, what year was this?
so this would have been 2008, and it was in March. So keep in mind, they had moved me away from everybody at karate. They had tightened down on the control. The only people I was allowed to see were the people that they wanted me to marry and their close family. And yeah.
So where did you go in your car? You took your clothes, your car, and you drove to...
I lived in my car. I lived in my car. And I lived in my car. So I switched campuses. I was in college at the time, keep in mind. And because I was already enrolled, even being a minor, I could just re-enroll in school. And my parents didn't know that I was still in school.
Makes sense.
And so I did have some people from karate who helped me, and they helped me get a bank account. They helped me figure out how to transfer my financial aid and do all of that part, right? And so I was living in my car, and I was going to karate and going to college. And one of my friends at karate came to me and was like, "Nicole, what are you doing? And I was like, because we had hung out and then I left, and I was like, he was like, where are you going? And I was like, I'm just going to go to one of the, so I would stay at truck stops, right? And I would shower at the truck stops, and then, yeah. And so he was like, my sister's moving out. You should just rent the other bedroom. And I was like, that could get you in a lot of trouble. If anybody found out, like you could get arrested. And this guy he was about 23, 24. He was from the Mormon religion, so he understood a lot of the like.
What's the age of an adult? Is it 18 in Utah?
Yes.
Okay, so and you weren't 18 yet? No,
I was not 18. No. So yeah, so he let me just live there and not be on the lease. And then 3 months later, so I called my mom. I got a cell phone, and because I missed my mom and I missed my siblings, and I wanted to make sure my siblings were okay because I knew the life they were living, right? And so I called my mom, and I probably called her about a month later, and I called her, and I told her I loved her, and she said to me, she's like, you should go kill yourself because you're dead to us anyways. And
my gosh.
oh my,
yes.
Wow.
Yes. So when I heard that, I was just like, I was broken. Like whatever I wasn't broken, I was broken. And like, now keep in mind, she hasn't seen me for a month. She doesn't know if I'm alive. She doesn't know like any of that. She hasn't seen or heard from me in like a month. And that's what she said to me. And I was like, and like, I hung up the phone, and like, I remember I was at my apartment, and I just started sobbing. And my roommate at the time, he came in and he was like, are you okay? And at that point, I started drinking, and I started drinking a lot. And I did that for about 2 months where I was drinking, I was going to school. And this is also where I met my husband. I ended up marrying the guy that I ended up marrying. And he really was my safe space. And we didn't get really close until I turned 19 because he was going back and forth. But yeah, so I met him and then hung out with my roommate, and I was just drinking and partying. And finally, it got to a point, like my mom came back around. She called me back like a week later. And now that I look back on it, I believe that my dad told her to do this. I don't think that she did this of her own accord.
No, because deep down inside, a mother's instincts are going to be towards love and towards normally.
Not manipulation, right?
Yeah.
So she called me, and like she kept telling me, she's like, well, your dad said that like we can just forgive you, we could all move on, like just come back and all this stuff. And they started fighting really hard for me to come back. They sent multiple guys after me to try to get me to marry him. Anybody they thought that I would say yes to, they sent them after me. And I was just like, and I'm 17 years old. Like, I don't know what, I'm still trying to figure out how to do a bank account, let alone like how to even.
But did you know at that point that this was still a manipulation tactic on their part by sending men to marry you, like to get you to come back?
Yeah. So
you didn't fall for it, obviously, because you married the man that you told us about.
I did. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So it was really, so I feel like I understood the game, right? So like at that point, I had a lot of compassion for my mom because coming from where I came from, I started understanding her side of it a little bit more, right? Like she was married when she was 16. She didn't have any, like I was going through a hard time trying to be on my own right now, right? Like I left, and it's hard and it was shitty. So like understanding why she chose to stay and live that lifestyle, I had a lot more compassion for her. It still wasn't what I wanted to do. And I felt like she was weak for doing it. And maybe that's not fair. But in my mind, I was going to be stronger than that. Right. And so I understood what she was doing, and I understood the manipulation behind it. But I thought, if I can just wait out that manipulation, if I can just wait out, if I can get to her heart, right? And that's part of being a kid, and this is a normal thing. Like I've done so I'm working on a master's degree in counseling. I've studied psychology, and a kid wants to feel like they're enough from their caregiver, right? That's a natural human emotion and feeling. And I had that so strong with my mom. I feel like I got to a point where I accepted I wasn't going to have it with my dad, because I'd had a conversation with him and flat out told him, hey, like, your son sexually abused me from these ages. And he didn't really, his response was not that of empathy or compassion. It was like, well, why didn't you tell me so I could have done something about it? And I'm like, that was just my fault. Right? But with my mom, I thought that, like, there's no way that she didn't love me. I couldn't accept that in my mind. And so I kept trying to do everything I could to build a connection with her, to build something real outside of going back. Because I knew that wasn't it. So I knew what going back meant. Going back meant marrying this guy, and I was never going to see my mom anyways, because I would be only allowed to really be with his family, right? Like, when a wife gets married, she leaves her family and goes to her husband's family. So I knew going back was not going to give me what I wanted from my mom. It was not going to give me the love. It was not going to give me the relationship that I was so desperately craving. And so I thought, I can build that in another way, right? And so while I'm trying to build this relationship with my mom, she's trying to get me to come back so that it saves her soul. And now looking at it, I see that she was under a lot of pressure, because now looking at my siblings after me, like, my brothers have not been able to marry anybody high up in the community. Because I left, my sisters were quickly married off to the same, ironically enough, the brothers of the guys that they tried to get me to marry, which is how I know that this was kind of a brokerage deal, right? Like, they're making business deals and using women as collateral. And it was just like, I really started understanding the depth of the manipulation, and it really just is a game. It's all a trauma-filled game.
But would would you label this period that you're describing right now, the beginning of your deconstruction?
Yeah, I think that my deconstruction really started. I think it really has to start while you're still in the situation.
Of course.
And
okay.
I think going to college was a big start to that. But I think also seeing, like, so my grandmother, looking at human development, right? Because I've studied a lot of psychology. My grandmother had a lot of empathy, and she was very protective of me. She passed away when I was 6 years old. But I think she did a lot to help me have those very basic developmental core skills. Yeah. And so when I got to be a little bit older, then I think that the level of empathy that I do have for people, I couldn't survive in that state of mind without breaking. And so I started deconstructing. I started doing research when I was going to karate. Like, I was reading everything that I could. And then when I went back to college, like, I did a lot of research on philosophy and a lot of cult research, right? Like, understanding what happened to me. And my therapist says that I logic my trauma, right? And so I think my deconstruction really started when I was 16 years old. And it wasn't really like a linear process. It was going back and forth, and just it was a chaotic mess.
Now, would you say that you think your grandmother encouraged critical thinking, started the beginning of that, or was she just basically teaching you empathy? Do you think that she wanted to see you get out? I guess that's what I'm asking. Do you think she was seeing that far ahead, that she wanted more for you?
I don't think so. I think that she was really just, and this is where, in fact, this is where a lot of my very core ideology comes from, because when I look at what she did, she never really talked about the order. She did talk about empathy and kindness and loving people and being there and, like, having those connections. In fact, I remember working in the garden with her, and I remember her teaching me, and I remember like there was so much abuse that was just so rampant in the community, but it never came from her. And she was always happy. She was just always so kind, and she was kind to everybody. And it wasn't just to me, right? She was kind to all the neighbor kids. Like she just was so loving, and you just felt safe with her.
What year did you write the book? Is it a book? Because I see it's called a memoir, but a memoir, you wrote a book called The Leader's Daughter, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
When did that concept come to you, and when did you do that?
So that's actually funny. So after I left, right, and as they were trying to get me to come back, I met my husband. I was 19 at the time, and I started dating the guy that I ended up marrying. And we started dating, and my dad, like I was still working for their company at the Standard Restaurant Supply. And they convinced me to go back and work for them. And I think that was just their way to keep a little hook in me. And so I was working for them, and there was an opportunity to come up to go to China, right? And my dad stayed completely out of that part, because I think they realized like my dad was not getting me to come back. And so the first guy that I was supposed to marry, he came in and started pretending to be my friend, right? And he was the one that actually gave me a job at Standard. And we started being more friends. And I was under this crazy idea that we could just be friends, right? Whether I was in the order or not. And he brought an opportunity to go to China, and he told me that there would be a potential opportunity to manage a warehouse in China. And it was all bogus. The whole thing was bogus, but it did get me a free trip to China, right? And I was there for 6 weeks, and I remember laying there one night, and I was like, I'm here, and like I think I'm going to write a book. And so I started the book.
So wait. The idea came to write a book in China.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm in China. I'm on my first or second day there, and I'm like, the people that I was associating with or hanging out with in China they worked during the day, right? I didn't have anything to do during the day. So I would get up, I would go to McDonald's, because like I never got to eat fast food in America, right? So I would get up in the morning and I would go to McDonald's, and I would get their pancake breakfast, and I would come back to the hotel, and I was bored the rest of the day. I got the idea. I'm going to write a book. So I sat down, and I just I had all my journals with me, because I didn't have really any place to store them, right? And so I started reading through my journals and really trying to process what happened to me. And I was like, I'm writing a book. And so I wrote my book, and I had it pretty much finished by the end of the 6 weeks. And it was just like all of these feelings and everything that happened just came out, right? And then as time went on, I got it to an editor, and they liked the book, but they wanted me to. So I went from different editors, right? I didn't like the feedback I got. I had one that was like, well, you should make it more about the child abuse. You should make it more about this. This is going to elicit a stronger response or whatever. And at the end of it, I was like, my purpose is just to tell my story, right? It's not a sell. I'm not going to exploit myself, right? I've been exploited forever. I'm not going to exploit myself.
To become a millionaire and off your trauma. Okay.
Well, this was part of your deconstruction process, obviously. This is how you were figuring out what the hell had happened to you and trying to put it together. And I'm sure going back and reading those journals with a more deconstructed mind, you were like, oh my gosh, I'm sure you were looking back and seeing what your younger mind, how it was processing that and realizing how far you'd come.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, when all of these editors wanted me to change different things about the content, I was just like, no, no. This is my story. And it's not super flashy. It's not super but it's my story. This is what happened to me, and this was my perspective. And I've gone back and I've read it since, I've grown a lot, and I'm like, wow, like I have grown a lot, and I'm a very different person now. And even as I continue to grow, like I've thought about doing like a follow-up book, but I'm like, my life is a little bit boring now. like and I
No,
love
but you still listen. We sat down to do an episode with you and turned into 2 parts. I think you might have a second book in you.
Well, and some of it could be about the deconstruction and going back and looking at the way you used to see it or view it or process it to compared to how you're processing that same information now after experiencing more life and growing up and gaining wisdom and getting that critical thinking going.
Yeah, I have definitely yeah, like I've definitely played around with a second book. I love writing anyways, and so I do want to continue writing, and even if it's more fiction and kind of just more thought-provoking, I think that would be. But yeah, like I've definitely thought about, and even when I look back on my deconstructing, it's not the flash, like I wish, like it's just there's just so much change, and it's so crazy to think, because when I was in it and I was deconstructing, like there was a lot of PTSD, a lot of trauma that I was working through. And when I look back on that time in my life, because so right after I left, I had about the first 5 years that I did a lot of deconstructing. Like I had people come up to me and be like, wow, did you know your group did this? Because a lot of the media you don't get exposed to while you're in the cult, right? They hide that,
Right.
or they
Yes.
or they change it. So
And
I come out,
now, and today, well, maybe even 5 years ago, back 2008, there wasn't TikTok, there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't that
exactly.
much exposure. Now there is.
Right. And even right after I came out, like all of the things that happened. So there was a huge case. Her name was Marianne, and she was the first person that really like sued John Daniel. And so like I come out and I'm like, and all of these people, because I wasn't private about where I came from, right? Like I ran into a lot of people who like even would tell me like, you look a lot like Paul Kingston. And I'd be like, he's my dad. And they'd be like, oh my God, what the fuck? And I'd be like, it was just crazy because I didn't understand the way the world saw us, right? Like I was still a little
Right.
bit brainwashed. And so like they would hand me these news articles and be like, this is your family. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? This, I've never even seen this in my life, but like I literally lived through it. And so like I went to the library and I researched everything about my group. And I was like, oh, wow. Like what, like I lived in this and I did not ever see this. Like this is literally out in the newspaper, but you don't get the newspaper in the cult.
Right.
And
No,
so
when you're inside the bubble, you're not seeing the outside of the bubble, right? And now you're on the outside of the bubble and you're looking at it from the outside and it's a totally different perspective and you're seeing it with
yes,
that deconstructed mind and you're like, what the hell just happened? How is this possible?
absolutely, yes, absolutely. In fact, I remember because I remember reading all these articles and I was like, so there was a child abuse case. And I was like, I remember being at the courthouse protesting, taking these kids from their parents because I believed you should never take, like we were just practicing freedom of religion. Like it wasn't about abuse. It was just about them trying to persecute the order. And it was just Satan trying to like hurt God's people. And I'm reading all of the things that they're saying happened. And I'm like, wow, like I was lied to. I was completely lied to. I was completely manipulated. And it starts that deconstruction process goes really quickly at the beginning because you're like you can't get enough information about it. And then when you finally get to a point where you've got the information, you've got both sides and you're like, who am I? Like I came from here and I like this is my core development, my core fundamental identity. And now I'm here. And this is how I see that place. But now how do I see myself? Because I am a product of that. And I still have like a lot of, so like I was diagnosed with pretty severe complex PTSD. And I would have severe mood swings. I would have severe, like I would disassociate quite frequently. I was severely what most of society would call severely mentally ill. And then I came to it and I was like, what do I do with that? Like, how do I work through this? Like, how do I, like, am I just this broken person that came from this broken place? And so I went and I had a really good therapist. And the first thing that she taught me is you have to validate your experience. You can't move forward in healing and deconstructing and working through everything until you can be real and honest with yourself that this happened to you and that this was the reality. And that those first 6 months, I will say, was probably almost more difficult than going through the trauma, because now I had to accept what had happened. And I had to, on a deep, deep level in my core, I had to say, I was child trafficked. I was sex trafficked. I was labor trafficked. I was abused. I was beaten. I was brainwashed. And you have a lot of guilt. Like, I was stupid enough to fall for it.
And you're now outside all of that in the world that you're unfamiliar with.
Yes.
And fend for yourself. And thankfully you did have the karate instructor and some friend that you had built along the way. Nicole, I really, really hate to say this, but we have to begin to wrap up. This is just, I feel like we could go for a third episode, but we need to begin to wrap up. So just tell us, you are married to the man that you met in college?
Yes. So we got married. We had our family. I was working on my mental health. I was diagnosed with, I have a lot of diagnoses, but it was complex PTSD, bipolar disorder. I've had DID. And so we did medication. I did really intense therapy to work through a lot of that. That's a whole journey in and of itself. I'm sure you can imagine.
That could be your second book, is how
Maybe.
How many kids did you end up having? Children.
So we had 5, and then we ended up separating for a couple of years to work on ourselves. And now we're currently pregnant with our 6th, and then we're done.
Wow. So you're pregnant right now?
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
I guess congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before we dive into the final questions, I did want to ask Nicole, could you share with our audience where they can find your book?
Yes. So it's The Leader's Daughter by Nicole Mafi, and it's on Amazon. There's a paperback and a Kindle edition.
You don't have to say specifically or say it all, but you're out of Utah? Are you in Missouri? Yeah. Are you, or you don't have to say if you don't want to say?
No, you're good. I actually moved out of Utah about 4 years ago just to get away from the culture, get away from just, I want to experience a different culture, right? And I really loved Missouri. It's still a little more right than I prefer, but yeah, it's definitely a softer culture than Utah was.
Where are you in your faith today? Do you have faith? Do you go to any organized religion? Do you have a God? Any of the above? And you do not have to answer if you don't want to.
It's totally okay. So I am an atheist. I believe in science.
Okay.
I believe in things that I can. Yes, I believe in science.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Not a surprising answer at all.
No.
So.
And my
Melody,
final question.
Your final question, yeah.
Yes, my final question, Nicole, is if somebody is listening that maybe even be part of the order, or they're in some other kind of group, or they're thinking about joining a group that they're unsure of, what would your advice be to them?
If it feels wrong, it's probably wrong. Listen to your gut. Trust yourself. And a lot of people will say, well, I have mental illness and blah, blah, blah. Trust yourself. If you see a red flag, trust yourself and therapy. If you're in a situation where, so I think that cults really prey on people who are in very vulnerable positions. And if you find yourself in that position, you need to, I would recommend go inward and work on yourself, and don't look to somebody else to find those answers.
Perfect advice, Nicole. We can't thank you enough for readjusting your schedule, doing everything we've done to make this happen, and staying for a 2-part episode. We just so appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you guys. Yeah, I appreciate what you do. I've looked at some of your other podcasts, and I think that's really why I started sharing my story. Is these stories need to come out, and people need to know that they do have support. And they're not alone in it, because I think you come out and you feel like you're kind of stupid for falling for it. And the reality is people are just really good at preying on people. And it's not anything wrong with you. It's something wrong with the predator that is preying on you.
Absolutely. And the other thing about telling your story is that you gain that power back, because you're muzzled when you're in these cults. You are muzzled. You're told what you can and can't share, what you can and can't say. And when you have that freedom and you finally are like, this is my story and I'm going to freaking tell it. It does really put that power back in your hands. So we love that. Thank you so much again, Nicole.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Melody, you put all her social media in the show notes.
Yes, we will have that in the show notes along with a link to her book. So I will be, I'll be contacting you about that, Nicole, to get all that information. So,
Nicole, thank you. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And thank you guys. I really, I appreciate the opportunity. And like I said, I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. So
we'll be right back after a quick break.
Don't go anywhere. More Cultimatum is coming up.
And once again, we want to thank Nicole for part 2 of her episode, for coming on and finishing the rest of her story. Andrew, she had too much to tell. It wasn't going to all fit in one episode. We needed that 2-part for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say it again, and I really wish at somehow it just can't be done. But the audience cannot see our guest. And once again, I see the guest, Melody sees the guest, and watching her body language as she tells her story is so amazing. When she was talking about the part about talking to her mother, and when her mother, some of the things her mother said to her, you could see in her face the sadness, and it was heartbreaking. And I don't wish anybody that has to watch that, but to see it as she's telling the story is just amazing. And this is why we do this. This is why we bring these episodes to you, is to show you that these cults are just the people in these cults and the cult leaders and their families are horrible.
And I'll say to the audience, I also noticed your body language when she was saying, like when her mom basically told her to take her own life, because, and Andrew's jaw just dropped, his eyes got really big, and even your body language was just like, what the hell? Your mom said that to you? Yeah, nuts. Yeah, crazy.
Well,
but what?
Well, because I said it during the episode, I'm like, it's not a mother's instinct. So when she said that the first time, when she said, Mom, I don't want to marry this guy or something, and she was like, whatever she said, it's not. And then she came back and she said, well, that was really her father telling her to say that. I'm not a mother, obviously, but I am a parent. And just know it's not something you would say to your kid. Again, I'm going to put it in air quotes, under normal conditions. That's anything but normal, what she went through with this cult.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
and the whole thing, when she used the word attempt, she didn't use the word suicide, and I'm assuming that's what she meant.
Yes,
I was not going to push her on that. Yeah, I was not going to push her on that.
But wow, she's come a long way, and she's got an interesting story. For anybody out there, her book link will be in the show notes if you're wanting to hear more of her story. I'm sure, like I said, that's going to have a lot more details, and I'm sure it's very interesting.
And I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. She's pregnant with her 6th child. And this is, I think, the first time we've had a guest that is still creating a family post cult.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I'm not sure that we've run into that, at least not as of yet. At least not that we were aware of. But yeah, very interesting. We're so happy for Nicole that she's where she is. She's restarted her life, kind of moved herself and her family to a spot where she feels more comfortable and probably a lot safer being away from the order. And so thank you once again, Nicole, for coming on the show. And as always, thank all of you for tuning into Cultimatum. We do appreciate your support in our mission to expose the truth and highlight the voices of these survivors.
If you're enjoying the show, and we hope you are, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep listening to all of our latest episodes.
Hopefully you'll give us 5 stars. I'll just throw that in there. You can also follow Cultimatum on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for more content and updates.
5 stars. Little subliminal message. Yeah. Don't forget to join our Facebook group, Cultimatum Podcast, where we dive deeper into these important topics.
And if you are a cult survivor and you're looking for additional support, we do recommend joining the Cult Escape and Healing group on Facebook.
If you're interested in more of my work, go check out the website, AnonymousAndrewPodcastStudios.com. And on that website is all the podcasts that we have. So you got The Weekend Rant, you got Digital Dating, and of course, Cultimatum.
And if you have a story related to cults or human trafficking that you'd like to share on the show, please email us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
Want to support the show? You can help us with production costs by visiting or going to our show notes and visiting Buy Us a Cup of Coffee. It's in, like I said, in the show notes, just to click on a link and you can donate to the show.
And every little bit does help. As always, stay safe, stay informed, and remember, you are not alone.